I'm Lindsay Zanno. I'm director of the Paleontology and Geology Research Lab at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences and assistant professor at North Carolina State University in the Biological Sciences Department. One of the really cool things about the discovery of this new giant dinosaur is that we actually have this giant Carcharodontosaurian who is, top dog in his ecosystem, and right next to him, living at the same time in the same place, we have tiny little tyrannosaurs that are about the size of a Great Dane. And so it's clear from this assemblage that tyrannosaurs were kind of just running around being the small predators in the ecosystem because they couldn't compete with this giant carnivore that was living at the time. But when those Carcharodontosaurians went extinct in North America, that's when tyrannosaurs were able to fill what's basically a void in the ecosystem and evolve into the giants that we know and love.
Why couldn't tyrannosaurs get bigger? I mean, it doesn't make sense, I think, to a lot of people.
So there are certain roles that just exist in the ecosystem, certain predator and prey relationships that are there and that are available for animals to fill. We often think that animals like T-Rex were so great that they outcompeted everyone and just took over. And that's not really how we understand evolution of animals through time. What often happens is that they can't compete with the top predator that's living in the ecosystem. He's adapted to be where it is, and so they're kind of competitively held down. But when if that animal goes extinct, and this is something we're facing in our ecosystems right now, is that all of our top predators around the world, lions and tigers and wolves, are all going extinct. Polar bears, they're often the most fragile animals in an ecosystem. And what we're learning is that then other animals in the ecosystem are able to adapt to fill those voids through time. So once Carcharodontosaurians were out of the picture, the little tyrannosaurs were able to evolve over millions, tens of millions of years into the giant T-Rex and become top predator.
What is everybody so excited about?
The big news is that we're about to announce a new species of dinosaur, and it's one of the biggest predatory dinosaurs we've ever found in North America. We haven't found a member of this group in 60 years here, so we're just super excited to tell the world about it.
So, are kids going to be learning about this dinosaur in little picture books in the future, do you think? Or?
I think so. I mean, this is an animal that's almost as large as the great T-Rex, and equally cool and powerful and vicious, and just a really interesting critter.
The other thing I thought was kind of neat, tell me a little bit about all of the different large Carcharodontosaurs that were living at the time, and then how at some stage it was only T-Rex.
So one of the big research questions we had when we went out in the field to find this animal, so we don't just go out in the field thinking, oh, let's go find a new dinosaur. We have a research question that causes us to go look in a particular place in a particular time period. What we didn't know was what animals were living in North America 100 million years ago. We know a ton about the animals that lived before in the late Jurassic. And in the late Jurassic, about 150 million years ago, there were all kinds of large-bodied carnivores or predators running around. There were at least 5 different predators running around in the same ecosystem. We also knew a ton about the late Cretaceous, when the great T-Rex and Triceratops lived. But by the time we get to the late Cretaceous, we only have one giant predator roaming around. So we wanted to know what happened in between. Where did all those different types of predatory dinosaur go? And what was the top dog in the ecosystem during the early late Cretaceous, about 100 million years ago? Our new giant dinosaur is a member of a group of dinosaurs called Carcharodontosaurs. It's kind of a tough word to say. They were a group of dinosaurs that lived almost all over the world. And we didn't know that we were going to find this particular type of dinosaur here in North America. The name Carcharodontosauria, it actually means shark-toothed lizard because their teeth are kind of compressed like shark's teeth and fine like shark's teeth. Very different from Tyrannosaurus rex, which has giant kind of thick banana teeth. So these are fine, serrated, knife-like teeth.
Okay, so when kids read about this in a book, what are they going to call this? They're going to call this the Siats Dinosaur?
Siats. They're going to call it Siats. Now, I should say, just because we named it the man-eating monster doesn't mean that it ate men, of course, because men and Siats lived 100 million years apart. But we adopted a legend. It's a local legend from the area where Siats is found, from the Native American tribe that lived there. And they had a legend about a man-eating monster called Siats. And so we thought that was a really great name for our new dinosaur.
So, every other dinosaur that I know is something osaurus. This is weird a little bit. Why Siats instead of Siatsosaurus?
You know,
I
it's
don't know.
boring. We're all of us as scientists are bored with saurus names. I am. So I don't think I've never named a dinosaur out of the dinosaurs that I've named that ended in saurus. They've all been just unique names.
So that's not like a thing. You have to name a dinosaur Saurus. It's just, how did that come about? It's just randomly, no rule, huh?
There's no rule. I think people tend to tack similar endings onto names so that when you look at the name, you know instantly what group of animal you're talking about. So if I say to you some dinosaur name you've never heard of, but it ends in saurus, you know basically it's a dinosaur name. We do the same thing with crocodiles. Sucus we use for crocodile-like animals. But it doesn't mean you have to, and I think lately people have been branching out a little more with some names and giving dinosaurs more unique, easier to say names. We are super excited because we are announcing a new dinosaur to the world very soon. And it's not just any dinosaur, it's a mega predator. So it's a giant carnivorous dinosaur, closely about the same size as a T-Rex, a little bit smaller, but second or third largest predator ever found in North America, and it's just really thrilling.
Okay, so how often does something like this happen? I mean, does this happen every year? I mean, should this be really, like, should people really care about this? Because it sounds big, but...
Well, so dinosaurs are named probably every month. We're at a point in paleontology where new animals are being discovered at an incredible rate. And it's hard even for scientists to keep up with all the new discoveries. But this animal, one of these animals hasn't been found in North America in over 60 years. So it's been a really long time since we've been able to announce to the world something of this scope and size. Oh, there were tens of thousands of different kinds of dinosaurs. We have maybe named 600 or 700 that are valid today. The interesting thing is, and what I think a lot of people don't understand about fossils, is that there are some animals that were alive on the planet that we're never going to find in the fossil record. There were certain environments where animals weren't getting preserved, their skeletons weren't getting preserved. So there are whole ecosystems of dinosaurs that we'll probably never know anything about. What's really interesting about this animal is that we know a ton about the dinosaurs that lived in North America during the late Jurassic. Those are all the dinosaurs you grew up with as a kid: Stegosaurus, Allosaurus, Camarasaurus. And then we know a ton about the dinosaurs that lived at the very end of the reign of dinosaurs, like Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus. But there are tens of millions of years in between those different dinosaur faunas, and we have basically no idea what lived here in between. So what we did is we launched an expedition to go out to rocks of those ages and look and see what kinds of dinosaurs were here before the great T-Rex, right? But after things like Stegosaurus. And what we found is that it's a whole nother ecosystem of dinosaurs that's composed of unique groups of dinosaurs that we didn't even know existed on North America during that time. So this animal is a member of the Carcharodontosaurs, which are a giant group of dinosaurs that live mostly in South America. Very famous, Giganotosaurus, Carcharodontosaurus. And we didn't know that this group really was living here in North America during this time, about 100 million years ago. It's incredible to sit down and think about how long dinosaurs reigned the planet. So they were the top dogs in the ecosystems for, over 100 million years. 100 million years, and most of them went extinct about 65 million years ago. So if you think about it like this, that we are closer in time to T-Rex than T-Rex was to some other kinds of dinosaurs. That's how long dinosaurs were living on the planet.
Tell me about some of the animals we think about that never existed together.
So something like T-Rex and Stegosaurus lived, something like, trying to do a calculation in my brain, 80 or 90 million years apart, which is obviously longer than us and T-Rex, which is only about 65 million years. So it isn't like all the iconic dinosaurs that we think about lived at the same time. In fact, Jurassic Park is a horrible movie in that way because it takes all these dinosaurs from the Cretaceous and the Jurassic and sort of shoves them all together, kind of gives you that sense that they all lived at the same time.
Right. Now, when you talk about giant carnivorous dinosaurs, what do most people think about? And what were maybe the most common ones?
So of course everybody thinks about T-Rex. We think about a giant carnivorous dinosaur, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole variety of super cool dinosaurs that were close to that size, that were top predators in their ecosystems, and that looked a lot different. Things like Spinosaurus, which has a face that looks kind of like a crocodile and a big sail on its back. These Carcharodontids had sort of really thick skulls. But some of them were also very gracile and slender, very agile, just really interesting animals.
So, as a kid, what are some of the dinosaurs most kids know? And then expand on that. What would you say are the dinosaurs kids today should be learning? As like, we probably learned what people thought were the most common dinosaurs, and then now maybe it's different. So.
It's funny, dinosaurs have such a special place in our hearts, and those are all the dinosaurs we pass down from generation to generation. They're cultural icons, like Triceratops. Everyone knows Triceratops. But Triceratops was found in North America 100 years ago, a century ago. And since then, we've named hundreds of dinosaurs. Things that are coming out of China are really incredible. All kinds of feathered dinosaurs with bizarre feathers all over their bodies and crests and just unique shapes and sizes, and tiny dinosaurs and giant dinosaurs that have been found since things like Triceratops and T-Rex that most people don't even know about.
So you were telling me earlier that there's probably some animals that are not actually around anymore, some dinosaurs. Tell me a little bit about that. What's not around anymore?
Yeah, so fortunately for us, but sort of unfortunately in the realm of the imagination, almost all of the dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. But one lineage of a theropod dinosaur, which is a predatory dinosaur like T-Rex, was living at the time in the Cretaceous and actually survived that extinction event. And those are, of course, birds. So birds are not just relatives of dinosaurs. They're not just descendants of dinosaurs. They are living, breathing dinosaurs that survived that extinction event.
Now, and while we're on that, this is kind of interesting. We think of pterodactyls. Did pterodactyls, were they the lineage that went to birds, or how did that work?
Yeah, so because of children's books and things that, you open a children's book of dinosaurs and you'll see all kinds of things that aren't actually dinosaurs. Things like pterodactyls, which are actually flying reptiles. They're closely related to dinosaurs, but they're not part of the dinosaur family. So birds who are dinosaurs are very distantly related to things like pterodactyls. And so we need to sort of dispel that myth that pterodactyls and other weird things like Dimetrodon, which you see as a sail-backed animal, were actually dinosaurs. They'll go in.
Okay.
They're going in
well, so elaborate on that. I think that's probably something that I don't know very well about. You have these dinosaurs, you have these Pteranodon and different things that we think are dinosaurs. What defines a dinosaur?
So all dinosaurs actually stand upright like human beings do. So if you think about the way that you stand with your legs right under your body. And one of the unique things about dinosaurs is that they did too. Like that, similar to mammals, they had their arms and legs upright under their body. If you think about some other prehistoric creatures, things like ancient crocodile-like animals, they kind of have their arms splayed out. So you kind of tell the difference between a lot of ancient animals that weren't dinosaurs and dinosaurs just by looking at the way that they stood.
So some of the giant marine reptiles, those wouldn't be considered dinosaurs.
Yeah, so that's an easy one. No dinosaurs that we know of lived their whole lives in the water. So if you see an animal that's living, as a marine animal or freshwater animal that's living in the water, it's definitely not a dinosaur. We used to say the same thing about flight. We say dinosaurs didn't live in the water and they didn't fly, but then we figured out that birds are dinosaurs.
So what would you call those animals?
So the things that lived in the water, things like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs and plesiosaurs and all kinds of awesome, terrifying, bizarre reptiles that inhabited water before the mammals did, but not dinosaurs.
Now, that's not too bad. Tell me a little bit more about this dinosaur that you guys discovered. Where did you discover it? Tell me a little bit more about that.
The discovery is actually a great illustration of how the scientific process works in paleontology. So we're announcing this dinosaur, it's 2013, and you might think that we found it last year, for example. But actually, I found it in 2008. So the first year we found it, then we had to get permits to dig it up. It took us 2009, 2010 to actually excavate the entire skeleton, so 2 years. Then it takes years for the volunteers in the lab to actually prepare the bones so we can study them. Then we do the research, then we do the publication. 5 years later, we're ready to make the big announcement.
That's awesome. So, tell me where you found it in the U.S., generally, as specific as you can, and why that area maybe allowed you to find this new dinosaur. You can touch on what you can say.
We found this dinosaur in central Utah, right in the Utah desert. It's a very hot, dry environment. We suffer through a lot of rough conditions out there. It was 130 degrees last summer, monsoonal rains. It can be really rough. But the great thing is that it's very exposed, so there's no plant life around there. You can see the rocks, and that's what you actually need to be able to do to find fossils, is you need to be able to see them actually eroding out of the ground. So you need an area where the plant life isn't covering the ground.
What animals do you discover? What don't? What are we missing?
Well, animals that we find in the fossil record have to be deposited, have to die in an area where they can get covered with sediment. So they need to be buried in order to preserve in the fossil record. So we find animals that lived near rivers or lakes or places where water's covering their skeletons after they die. We don't find environments like mountains where the rocks are being shed away and shed down the mountain into the valleys, but there's no sedimentation happening to actually preserve those animals. So we're at a complete loss. It's a complete blind spot as to what types of dinosaurs lived up on mountaintops.
What are some of the other places that we don't know of different animals that lived?
Beach environments are really hard for animals to get preserved. If you think about walking along a beach, when you do find bones, they're often really battered up. So when we go to environments that are really close to the shore, we often have a hard time finding exactly what was living there because the fossils are in really bad condition.
Iterate on that. Where's the best places for fossils to?
You know, I think the best places have turned out to be lakes. Lakes have super fine sediment. They often bury whole animals that fall in, the skeletons all preserved. Often we have evidence of the soft tissues or the feathers. We find impressions of wings or skin. They can be really beautiful fossils.
What do you think are some other misconceptions people have about giant carnivorous dinosaurs?
Well, you know, I think one of the big misconceptions right now is that we found everything there is to find in North America. I think people don't get excited enough about what we have here in our backyards. We think about exotic fossil localities in Africa or in China, but here we are making still really incredibly important discoveries for science right here in the US. So I think it's important to understand as a student that you don't have to go all the way around the world to find incredible things. There's a lot to learn right here.
Like what should the general public know if they could get one thing out of all this?
Geez, I think if you want to understand dinosaurs, you should just go to the zoo and watch some birds, or watch some birds in your backyard. I mean, for all that we can do as scientists with dinosaurs, we can't give you the same immersive experience as you can have just interacting with a living, breathing dinosaur. And so still one of my absolute favorite things is to just watch birds, to watch how they move, watch them think, watch them do incredible things, watch them fly, because we'll never see a tyrannosaur move. We can model it, we can study it, we can learn a lot about it, but we can watch living, breathing dinosaurs today, and that's incredible.